To order at 6 p.m. Start with a roll call.
Steve Laurie here.
Margaret Rayner here. Jane Pitkin here.
Nico Vermont here.
Bill Sutter here.
Jake Cooter here.
And Alex Wilkinson here. Are there any additions to the agenda? No? I don't need to say that last part. Anyway, sorry. All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All right, let's vote. Yes, let's say aye.
Aye.
Any no's? We're good, all right. Is there, oh yeah, in the minutes. Minutes from March 3rd, does anyone have notes on? Are we good?
Alex, I have some notes that Steve gave me on several, 3, 4 mistakes in the just corrections that needed small errors. So I have those.
All right, we'll just vote to add or approve them with the additions. All right, yeses?
So you need a motion.
I'm sorry.
I move that we
Second.
accept the minutes with the changes, with the corrections.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. And noes? Good, all right. Next is, all right, any conflicts of interest on anything to the? No, awesome. Public hearings, there are none. Citizens wishing to address the commission on agenda items. If anyone besides the applicant is here to comment on new business items or work session, now's the time. Cool. All right, old business, there is none. Okay, at this time, we would let new business, at this time, we'd like to hear from the staff.
Right. This is 401 CSD 0326 and 02 SBR 0326, McClellan Meadows Site Condominium. City staff has reviewed proposed site condominium subdivision to be named McClellan Meadows, consisting of 7 units located on McClellan Avenue, and have provided comments regarding the plan. Those comments weren't in the staff report. And the land development code specifies a 2-step review process. The planning commission will review the site condominium proposal and provide a recommendation to the city commission. Then the city commission will review it. In the agenda, you have the staff file review. Which I'm showing on the screen. The planning commission will need to review those items. And then attached to that, you have the site plan review application from the applicant. And their narrative regarding the site plan review items that were not in the set. Staff comments, their responses to staff comments. The area map. The parcels outlined in blue. The block map, the parcels outlined in blue. Photos of the site. And then the site condominium. Did the planning commission have any questions to staff?
No. Oh, Steve.
I do have one question, more procedural than anything, I guess. Looking at the development code language, it says the planning commission shall consult with and receive a written response from the planning director, attorney, engineer, zoning administrator. Regarding the adequacy of the master deed restrictions, utility systems, and street development layout.
Yeah, so that's an amendment we'll be bringing to you guys, because in the other part of that code and H, it states that they don't start doing the master deed until after city commission review.
Okay, but
So I talked to
also,
the city attorney, so that supersedes.
also, on my past bad condominiums that we have dealt with, the utilities have all been installed ahead of time here. And I guess I'm wondering how that happened and, why there was a different procedure followed in this case.
You'll have to talk to the applicant, ask that question on that.
Pardon?
You'll have to ask the applicant on that,
Okay,
because they only put in one utility, I believe, right?
two.
Can I answer?
Yeah, just wait. Well, any more questions for me?
No, I think that's it.
Now the applicant can speak.
Hi, I am Megan Hornbogen. I am the board president of Habitat for Humanity in Marquette County. And I'm also an architect for Barry Colson's office here in Marquette. I don't know if you want me to go straight to answering these questions or if you want me to talk a little bit about the project and how it started. So how this project started, we were obviously looking for land to build housing. And this will probably answer the question too. And we had a parcel over on Spring Street next to the Beacon House. And they really wanted that parcel, and so they helped us find a new parcel to build on. And that's how we ended up at McClellan Street. But in our transaction to swap parcels, we told them we wanted it to be like for like, which meant the utilities had to be ready before we traded parcels. And so the medical center went through when they owned the property and got the utilities put in by Oberstar. It was not Habitat putting in the utilities ahead of time. It was just having a site that was ready to be swapped so that we would take ownership of this site. Yeah, so we're really just trying to follow all zoning and split it into the sizes that are allowed in the mixed use district and build some affordable housing in Marquette. If you have any questions, I'll be here.
Questions? All right, thank you. Okay, last time. PC to review. Move on, mark that here. Okay, I guess we need a motion here to suspend rules for discussion.
Also move.
Support.
All right, yeses? Or vote yes, sorry. I don't know how to say it yet.
All in favor?
All in favor, sorry.
Aye.
Any no's? Same, no, none, okay. Yeah, I don't know the proper word. Yeah, voted to suspend the rules for discussion. Okay, let's go through discussion. Okay, section 454. So just go through each one and then, all right. So in section 54.503, for condominium developments, I'm just gonna go through each one, intent and application, yeah. So site condominiums, shall I read the whole paragraph or do I already say that?
I'm gonna bring it up on the screen here.
Okay. All right, staff comments, for site, for B, under site condominiums. Staff report attached with attachment shall be the written response, if this is approved by the city commission, and the city staff will be reviewing the draft master deed restrictions, et cetera. All other items are being reviewed, through the separate process. What, okay, I'm lost here. What do I need? Like step by step, do we need to vote on this?
No, you guys are just reviewing the,
Gotcha. For letter C, there were no staff comments. Under D, several of these items have been addressed where applicable. And then there's more, in the applicant's response, there are more remaining items covered. Letter E, site plans for new projects. A site plan has been submitted, and this section has been met. Letter F, plans for expandable or convertible projects, no staff comments. Letter G, design and engineering standards and required improvements for site condominium developments. Staff comments are McClellan Avenue is an existing public street. The proposed sidewalk in the right of way has to meet city standards. Under letter H, approval and submittal requirements for master deed, restrictive covenants, as built surveys, and site plans and association bylaws to be furnished. Staff comments are, if this site condominium is approved by city commission, then this section must be met. Monuments required, letter I. If this staff comments, if the site condominium is approved by city commission, then this section must be met. Letter J, compliance with federal, state, and local laws. Staff comments, if the site condominium is approved by city commission, then this section must be met. K, subdivision of site condominium units and condominium units. Staff comments are per the applicant's response to zoning general comment 4. There is no plan to allow for subdivision of site condominium units. L, encroachment prohibited. Staff comments if the site condominium is approved by city commission, then this section must be met. M, relocation of boundaries. Staff comments are if the site condominium is approved by city commission, then this section must be met. And then lastly, letter N, performance guarantee. Staff comments if the applicant requests to have occupancy prior to installing all required improvements, section must be met at that time. And then relationship to site plan review standards. Under 1, public health, safety, and welfare, staff comments, the proposed site is for 7 site condominium units that will have access to existing public streets. 2, safe and efficient transportation options. Staff comments are, this project will be located on an existing public street. When the permits are submitted for the driveways, they will be required to meet land development code and city code at that time. 3, vehicular and pedestrian circulation. Staff comments, they are proposing to replace the city sidewalk that was removed during utility construction that was completed last fall, 2025. 4, topography and landscaping. Staff comments, the existing off-street parking lot was removed from the parcel and the site was created at that time.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it wrong, please? What is it that you're looking for from the planning commission for this? Looks
If
like,
you guys have any additional comments, and when he's reading it, you should state that to be part of your report.
okay, would you mind explaining the process of why it comes to?
Just like when you're doing rezonings and you're looking through each item, if you have any additional comments or you don't agree with any of those comments, this would now be your time for you to work on this.
Okay, this is not every change of zoning or anything like that.
No, but it's like an administrative review, for which in your motion, you're going to refer back to this. So if it's ever appealed, the planning commission has to approve it, they went through each one of those items and you either agree with those statements, you want to change those statements, or you want to add to those statements.
Finding of facts process.
Just like the BZA.
Right, but that's if you were trying to, if something's going to be changed, this seems like it would be something that would matches.
This is an administrative review, just like when you're reviewing for the variances, you have to answer each one of the questions. That's what you're going through now.
Okay, and that's completely clear why it's coming to the planning commission instead of just going to the city. I just want to understand better of what the goal is here today.
You're doing site plan review and site condominium review?
And we're required,
Yes.
Okay.
that's.
It's an administrative review that the planning commission is making.
Okay, I think I've just done 4. 5, stormwater management. Staff comments, any impervious future surface proposals will be evaluated as part of each individual zoning compliance permit for the associated structures. 6, emergency vehicle access. Staff comments are, police and fire department have reviewed the plans and have no comment regarding vehicle access. 7, outdoor storage and loading and unloading areas, not applicable. 8, lighting, not applicable. 9, location of building entrances, not applicable. 10, nuisances. Staff comments are, it is not anticipated that this development will be a nuisance to surrounding properties. And 11, City of Marquette Engineering, Design, and Construction Standards, not applicable. All right, any comments, questions?
Can I ask? I now have a question for staff. Is it okay if I ask now? So this proposal or this site plan review is to develop or to allow this to be developed as a site condominium, but they're not proposing any construction. So will we see a similar?
No, this is a site condominium request, so they're asking me, instead of going through the land division process, they're going through this process. Which is creating a split in the land as site condominium units.
Okay.
So that's why you guys are reviewing it and the site plan review. You're not gonna see design and things. Like I said, in there, each zoning permit is gonna be submitted for the buildings. So you are just reviewing a site condominium, not a condominium.
Yeah, and that, the review of the individual properties does not rise to the level of having the planning commission review it. And this process is a bit different than a rezoning or special land use, where you guys do have some discretion to make, well, in the case of rezoning, a recommendation that the city commission is going to take into consideration a public hearing. This isn't a public hearing. This is quite a different process, and a lot of it is spelled out by state law. So we're largely following the state law parameters for how we do this.
It seems like without, since that's the type of request that this is, and it's not like construction proposal, a lot of the things were not applicable or don't require a ton of review, so I feel like, yeah, all of this feels pretty straightforward.
Would anybody like to make a motion? Or, Commissioner Ward?
I realizing the utilities are not really a part of this, but I still have a few questions about the utilities and the way they're put in. I'm wondering whether they have been accepted as public utilities by the city at this point, because they're not shown on your block map with the public utilities.
I don't know how often they would amend that yet. They may be in the process of adding all new utilities.
And some of what was shown there does not seem to meet the city standards for valve locations, and for looping rather than creating long dead ends. I'm not sure if it's just not shown or if, and it was completed, or if it's shown as constructed there. It's hard to tell from the drawing that we have. Looks like the applicant may have some information on that.
Yeah, and I guess so what I know is that North Country Surveying and Engineering had the drawings drawn up for the utilities, and then went to the City of Marquette Public Works Department for approval, and their comments were incorporated, and it was permitted work in the utilities and the right of ways, and the only comments that the city had was that we had to create that easement so that we could keep the water line far enough away from the sanitary line. And so we have I think it's 25 feet easement on the front of our property now that allows the city utilities to come to our property.
Just one more question then. Most of the habitat homes that I'm familiar with they're typically built without a basement, they're slab homes. But this places the water main very close to your front building line. Matter of fact, it determines the front building line in some cases. And that's a high pressure water main. It's pressures in that area, I believe, are over 90 psi in the main. And has the potential to do some major structural damage if it's that close to the buildings. Right there. I'm just wondering if there's any specific measures being taken or that's being considered in the design.
Yeah, and so the front corner of the houses, I guess you can see the lots get a lot larger as we go south on the page. But the setback, that's required by the city, and the easement or about the city line. And the water line will be at least 10 feet from that beginning of the home line. And then we know where we set those houses, hasn't been completely determined. Obviously, like Andrea said, we're not pulling permits to build houses, we're asking to split it into a lot. So that will be determined at that time.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Dave, Andrea, you said staff recommends the following condition of approval, that an amended plan is submitted to meet the staff comments.
Correct.
So that's something you would like to put in the motion.
Yes, please.
Any other questions? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. After review of the site plan and the supplemental documentation dated 4/26/24 and the staff report 402-SPR-03-26 and 01-CSD-03-26. The Planning Commission finds substantial compliance with the City of Marquette Land Development Code, Section 54.1405 and Section 54.503, and hereby recommends that the City Commission approve 02-SPR-03-26 and 01-CSD-03-26 with the following conditions. That an amended plan is submitted to meet the staff comments.
I just have one correction. In my memo, the date wasn't updated to, instead of 4/26/24, it should be February 17th, 26. But that's it. Thank you.
Here's my motion.
Seconded.
All right, all in favor, say aye. No? Awesome. 7-0. All right,
Okay, yes.
next thing, we have a presentation for the climate action plan.
Do you want me to introduce myself too? Okay. So, hi, my name is Anna Towsley. I am a Rural Leadership Fellowship student. I'm in the third cohort of that, and I'm also an MPA student, going to be. I'm doing my bachelor's right now in political science. So, yeah. This is my project that I was given. So, it's a climate action plan with the city of Marquette. What is a climate action plan? A climate action plan is a strategy document that sets goals and outlines a set of initiatives that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is a lot of text on the slide, I know. Using a greenhouse gas emissions as the base, a CAP defines greenhouse gas reductions targets and provides a framework for achieving them. It identifies priority actions and facilitates coordination across departments. It supports effective action over time by establishing methods for assessing progress and adjusting the local strategy. So what is a greenhouse gas emissions inventory? It calculates, quantifies, or assesses municipal or community-associated emissions and their sources. They're an accounting of the carbon pollution that results from certain activities and processes that support municipal functions. We are going to be doing a government operations greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So what will this include? A target goal of 2025 to 2050 to match the climate action resolution of 2050. There's going to be an emphasis on previous and aligning actions that the city has done. There's going to be some community input through a steering committee, a public survey, and public engagement opportunities. So it's going to have an executive summary of climate action and climate change in Marquette, a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. It's going to have 7 focus areas with objectives and actions. And then at the bottom, it's going to have a matrix with goals along with cost effectiveness. So 7 focus areas are going to be buildings and energy, transportation, water and wastewater, waste and recycling, natural resources, public health, and then climate economy. And then some examples of this. One that shows off the beautiful efforts previously done by a city is done by Sterling Heights. One that shows off ways that you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions was done by Whitefish. And then kind of an explanation of what climate economy is and what an objective would be to show the focus area is that climate economy by Adina. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, I can answer them.
Questions?
Go ahead.
Not so much a question, just a comment. The city has in the past done several energy efficiency improvement projects with Johnson Controls.
Yes.
And I presume that the records will be a major source of your
Yes.
historical information.
Yes. The Johnson Controls is part of it. And then I'm using I'm having all the lovely city employees find like the drive times and the gas data and the natural gas bills and all the bills. So yeah, the Johnson Controls contract is one of the efforts that you guys have done for the building section, but it's not like what I'm using for the emissions inventory, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, so I just felt it would be a good resource.
Yeah, oh yeah, I read it.
That's the latest. Like, there were several prior to that as well.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gooder?
Is there, do you have any kind of a preliminary or hopeful timeline for completing this report?
So my fellowship lasts until December of this year. So my running shining hope is that this project and this plan will be done, have a draft done by December, and then it can be adopted by the city commission thereafter. My plan is to hopefully have this all done by December. Yes.
What do you envision as the community input opportunities? I know
So-
you list
Yes.
survey, public engagement, what do you see that playing out as?
So the survey is going to be, I just actually did it recently. It's going to be like 30 questions-ish about what do you think is the most important thing in Marquette, asking what services do you use, what services would you use. So that's one engagement opportunity. We're gonna have a steering committee, that's kind of on Dennis, so I'm not gonna speak too much on that. Then we're gonna have some sort of stakeholder sessions or some sort of open houses for people to come to and give their opinions to. I would also like to go to where people are, go to people's, like a game or something, or like, pick up time after school to get people's opinions, go to where people are, but I do plan on encouraging and talking to people of the public because this is a community plan and this is for everyone, and it's not my opinions and what I think, it should be what we all think and what we all want, so, yeah.
Thank you.
That's,
Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to the draft.
of course.
I just want to point out one thing. So one of the things Anna has discovered was the planning commission, when we adopted the land development code, had a woodland protection subsection of Article 8, which would have accomplished some tree protection had it not been kind of badly constructed and had some fatal flaws, and shortly after we adopted it, it was repealed. And I can fill you all in on more of that later, but one of the things I'm hoping we can do through this process is adopt some kind of a canopy standard for the city, some tree canopy standard that will then somehow make its way into our LDC and into the city's tree ordinance for street trees and public lands trees, and maybe create a public land bank on city land. And that's something that I think there's been enough turnover in the PC that not many of you remember this, but a couple of years ago, when Sarah Middlefelt was the chair, we were she was very eager for us to get to that place. And one of the things I learned at the state planning conference a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, was that no communities in Michigan have made progress on a legally defensible tree protection code. It's very problematic. So canopy standard seems to be like the most likely way we can kind of get at that. And so that's kind of an update on where we're at. Like that, it's been a long process or learning process to try to get back to where we can do some kind of actual tree protection through our city ordinances.
It'll be in the natural resources section.
I'm just curious, are there any, for having the Tree City USA designation, or whatever, is that what it's called?
Yes.
I see the signs.
Yes.
Are there any requirements?
I'm sure there are requirements. Steve might know, but planting requirements, I think, are probably the main.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that we've gotten it for like 44 years.
Mhm.
We've gotten it for a long time. I don't know who submits it, if it's the arborist or who does it, because I know Sean Hobbins does that My Green Communities application, but I don't know who did that.
Was originally started in the Parks Department, but as duties changed, it's a responsibility of the Parks or the Public Works Department and the Arborist Division to maintain that. The National Arbor Day Association standards require a tree committee of some sort. We used to have a standing tree committee as well as city commissions. Those duties eventually got folded into the Public Advisory Board, and now I think either this commission or the city commission is listed as the qualifying tree board. It's basically to resolve any disputes over trees.
I'm glad I got an answer to what happened with that.
And you also have to have a budget depending upon the, I think it's dependent upon the population. It's been a long time since I did it now, but so much per population, and you have to do a certain level of tree planting as well. I think it's either to match your removals or to meet a certain standard. But if you check the National Arbor Day Association, the Tree City USA program, it's really strong.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker.
Anna, one more question for you, sorry. In terms of the scope of the project, I think I probably know the answer, but just to confirm, are you just looking at like specifically city activities, or do you expect it to branch into, or is it allowed to branch into like our zoning and like how our zoning can be more,
Yeah.
more climate resilient?
It's mostly based off of what is all based off of like the city. It's not so much based off of, like we can't really tell the hospital what to do. We can't really tell Northern Michigan what to do. They're under different jurisdiction. The school district is under different jurisdiction. But I can put recommendations into the plan that say can update the land development code or update zoning codes. Those can be recommendations. I can't necessarily go willy-nilly and just wave my magic wand. But putting like the words of this group needs to do this or this committee needs to do that, like probably it's gonna be in there, just, yeah.
Great, so in that way it can extend to, be an action plan that's not just governing or not just recommending internal operations, but kind of
it will,
Extending outward to the
Yeah.
community.
there's gonna be actions that are for government, like for the municipal, like us, and then for the community, and like recommendations like, oh, you should encourage, the MVLP energy programs or encourage, city composting, not the Partridge Creek one, the old city side composting, but different things like that would be for the community.
I think to, just keep expectations realistic, it is gonna be mainly about city operations and what the city can affect, just like the county plan, just for the county. But,
That's also just based off of jurisdiction and legality and law.
yeah, and really the scope of what we can manage and reasonably expect to accomplish.
I'm still trying to figure out which buildings need to be included for the submissions inventory, because it's just confusing of like, oh, does this building need to be included, but we're figuring it out.
Great, thank you.
All right. All right, citizens wishing to address the commission on non-agenda items? Nope. All right. Correspondence, reports, minutes, no other reports, minutes, no. Trainings, no. And that takes us to item 8, work session on reports, planning ordinances, and land development code.
Right, these are the next steps that we have. Okay, so the first one is to fix languages. We have received clarification questions regarding the accessory dwelling units. So one of it is to add this language for maximum yard coverage. However, any detached accessory structure component of the ADU and any attached features such as exterior stairs, decks, or landings must comply with section 54705 for accessory structures. And then any remaining portion of a detached garage that is not converted to an ADU must also comply with that section. You guys have any questions about that? I'm hoping one day we'll be done with this. But I mean, I get it. People, this new and people are asking questions and we're just trying to make clarification for them. And the next is that interior stairs serving the ADU shall be counted towards the ADU floor area. Any questions on that?
That's just once. It's obviously taking up square footage on 2 floors, but you're only gonna count it once, correct?
Oh, correct. Yep.
All right, we'll go with that.
Okay, that was it for the ADU. Did you guys have any issues with those amendments for clarification? Okay. Then the next is we went through the discussion, we saw that there wasn't a through lot drawing. And in order to create the through lot, I was looking at that and we really should update the other drawing. So for yard terms, we updated this to show that the right of way line isn't always up. It's not normally up to the street. You have some kind of distance between there. So people have to understand they don't own up to the street. So we're just kind of clarifying that. Then on the yards of a corner lot, I'm amending that to match, what we have above. And then again, showing the right of way area and how that works. But also how a corner lot works, say with front yards and rear yards and side yards and things like that. Because it's not shown like it was in the above drawing. And then to show how a through lot works. So we're proposing to add this new one. And I gave you the through lot definition below, so you can see what we're referring to here. Because I believe previously they've had some amendments for the residential limited animal keeping, and we were talking about through lots and things like that. And we realized there wasn't a problem in that. Did you guys have any questions regarding those diagrams?
I have one. On the proposed for the corner lot, we've got a side yard and a rear yard shown.
Mhm.
Could those not also be flipped?
Yep, if they have the room to flip them.
Okay.
So it's whatever's going to benefit them, and in this instance, this would benefit them, because they could have room for the garage and the rear. And things like that.
All right. And then on the through lot, it's a front yard on both sides.
Correct,
How does a through lot provide parking?
with a driveway, and then a driveway will just be in the front yard, just like, it just, it would allow for them to have a driveway off the bottom street or on the top street, so you can have a driveway on both frontages. In that regard, they get a bonus compared to most people.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I have a question about that, the through lot. So if they wanted to fence that, it would be required, because there's no backyard, if you had kids, then what happens with the fencing and that?
You do have to meet fence guidelines for those yards,
So it'd have to be a 4-foot or
open construction.
open construction on one of those, if you're making it into a
If
backyard.
you're putting it in the front yard, you have to be open construction with 50% open. So they can be a 1-inch picket with a 1-inch opening.
Right.
You know,
But they still could do that.
yeah, the only time that you do this 6 foot on a normal lot is when you're in that rear yard area. They don't have the rear yard.
Gotcha.
Just-
Anyone else? Good with
Okay, the next one is in the form-based code, the MDW section. We had questions regarding the following definitions, and we're proposing updates for clarification regarding the buildable area. That's adding on that the buildable area does not include any portion of the site located behind the parking setback line that is designed or utilized as open area. And then adding it to the open area, for purposes of this definition, open area does not include portions of the site that are not intended to be accessible to occupants due to placement of parking, landscaping, or other functional constraints. Then for the parking setback line, adding the line plane indicated on the regulating plan extending generally vertically and parallel to the RBL that establishes the minimum distance behind the RBL where parking may be located. The parking setback line only applies to portions of the lot where parking is physically feasible or intentionally designed. Where a building occupies the RBL or where site conditions make parking possible or not intended, the parking setback line does not apply. And then parking may be placed anywhere behind this line except where otherwise limited by the MVW district or regulating plan. Did you guys have any questions about those?
Any questions?
All right, the next are Dave's. Oh, wait, yeah, April 7th, so we should talk.
Okay. Well, I'll just say that, a lot of what we just went over for the parking setback line, open area, buildable area, you're gonna see a lot more of that on the site plan. Actually, it'll help you understand a little bit better.
How it's applied.
Because this stuff is pretty obtuse, if you don't. Even working with this code is, even when you work with it somewhat, some of this is kind of these were actually pretty important changes, especially the parking setback line, because if we didn't change that, the open area requirements for properties are in question, whether or not you can have an open area and meet the standards for having open areas in places where otherwise you might think this is that you're required to have this parking reserved for parking. Anyway, the sections that are in the handout that I gave you that have been added to the agenda since it was published are just dealing with the special Article 14 procedure stuff and standards for, start with the 1403 special land use review So a lot of this is clarification and, when this was written, whoever wrote it didn't have Grammarly on their computer, wasn't using a program that helped you, write good sentences and clear sentences. So, I have that. And going through some of this, I'm finding, some of this language is, I mean, this was on the list, okay, this was on our list. I had on my list of things, annotations to go over the special land use review, site plan review standards, and rezoning, the conditional rezoning agreement, which is in here. That was a legal problem that we had to kind of wrap our arms around. We'll clean that up, but, so these are changes that, with these standards, there's 14 standards for site plan review. I realized in the past going through these that there was some redundancy in these standards, and part of it's the way it's written. And then the one thing I found that was definitely, I thought could be one standard that could be totally removed is that our number 12. And that's because in section 9, and I can go through these one by one, but yeah, I'm sure some of you have realized the same thing when we go through these. So you guys haven't had a chance to see these, so I would totally understand if you want to come back to this at some point after you've had a chance to read through these, but I'm seeing what I need. I'm kind of looking for what I need to explain, because on the first page, I don't think there's anything I really need to explain. Those are all kind of clarifications. In number 4, I just kind of thought it was appropriate to add a statement about stormwater absorption. We're talking about the purposes for landscaping. And then skip down to the number of persons and employees. Just the kind of way that was written didn't really, it just kind of seemed a little too vague. Assembly of persons or employees. So clarify that a little. I thought the vehicular and pedestrian circulation section needed to be a little more specific about what it's saying. So instead of saying negatively impact traffic flows, I thought there's a lot more to it in impairing efficient traffic flows and intersection safety, and access to property. It didn't mention access, and it didn't specify really that this applies to public areas and private areas or private areas, private right-of-way areas, and specifically in private roads, driveways, and sidewalks. Skipping down to number 9. This is the one.
Question,
Yeah.
you got 2 paragraphs underneath there.
Oh, yes, thank you for pointing that out. So I was going to skip right over that. So in 9, the first part of it where I have the highlighting is, this is the normal way we do this when we hand off a recommended change, is we underline those things that are new and highlight them and then line through. So this is what that looks like when all that's done to an existing paragraph. The paragraph below it's the original paragraph. The paragraph below that is the clean version of the new paragraph, the proposed new paragraph. So, well, if you take everything in here and you take out the stuff we're suggesting you
This is the original,
delete,
and this is the proposed language.
I'm just trying to make it a little easier to read that paragraph, because there's a lot of changes being suggested by the strike throughs and the new underline. So changing it to say anticipated or estimated vehicular and pedestrian traffic volumes and patterns, as well as vehicular turning movements, do not impair efficient traffic flows, intersection safety, site distances, access to properties, and general safety of all users of public right-of-way areas and or private roads, driveways, and sidewalks.
Did you
So-
do that? Did you do that to any other sections in this? or-
Well, in the next, when we get to the next section, I did. But just if we want to finish this section, that's the only one in this section. I didn't think it was, maybe number 9 is a little challenging that way too, but I thought it was a little more manageable. So number 9 deals with physical characteristics of the site and nuisances associated. So did number 12, and these are the two where I thought number 12 can be totally eliminated by moving a little bit of that information into the bottom of section 9. So with the changes to 9, it would read the current and proposed physical characteristics of the site, such as size/area. When it just says such as area, for a person that's not thinking mathematically, they think, well, what are we talking about with the area? So I thought it was important to put the size thing in there, so people think, well, the area is a geometric kind of concept, not just a, this place kind of a concept. Drainage, topography, open space landscaping, and access to streets will meet the development proposed, will meet the requirements of this ordinance and all other city standards. The use and development proposal shall be considered by its potential impacts upon the natural environment and natural resources on and around the site, and there is the potential for reasonable anticipated expansion of the use without nuisances to neighboring properties. That part, that last sentence, is out of section 12, which basically I thought that's the only useful part of number 12, because the first part of it is really saying the same thing as the first sentence of number 9, saying that there's adequate size. This parcel is adequate size to accommodate what's proposed to be done there. And that there's enough room to prevent the nuisances that might occur. So any questions on that? Okay. And then just adding nuisance factors to number 11, nuisance to that, because it's talking about nuisances, it's not talking about any other environmental factors. And then just a couple little additions there with the emphasizing community master plan. There's places in this code where it just says master plan. There's going to be plenty of others where we could make those changes at some point, but we're dealing with this section. I thought it's important to make that distinction because the city has at least 3 or 4 different master plans.
Do you have decibel levels included in your noise? Because that could come up to play when we talk about some of the development that we're gonna look at in the future.
Yeah.
Because we put that in another community and that kind of saved us having a decibel level because they were able to measure that would exceed it. So that would preclude having that development there.
Yeah.
That might be something you want to think about. I don't know.
Well, I do think we addressed decibel levels in certain other parts of the code.
As long as you got it someplace.
Yeah, and that was one of the recommendations for the data center.
Right, that's exactly what I was thinking about.
Or those type of uses. But I do think we have that in industrial, in part of that. I know that was a big deal when the BLP built the new energy center on Wright Street. And they actually had to go back and retrofit the original build to deal with neighbor complaints, but they were required to do, it's in the site plan review standards.
Okay.
Actually.
As long as we have it
The planning
someplace to
commission can
protect it.
require studies, noise studies, that kind of thing. And they did provide an initial noise study on that particular project. But the residents were not happy with the results and they went back and did some retrofitting for noise mitigation.
it just didn't see it there, and I just wanted to make sure it was someplace within our plan.
Okay. I'll move on to the next section.
Yep, are we all good with it?
Okay, so on the zoning and ordinance amendment procedures, so that first section that's all lined through is the original text, which I've, instead of, I got a 10 and 11 there. That's supposed to be 1 and a 2, sorry. We'll fix that. I'm pretty sure it's 1 and 2, it's not, it's an A and B. No, it would be 1 and 2.
Yes, it is.
So, this says the city commission, planning commission, property owner may at any time originate a petition to amend the change or change the zoning district boundaries pursuant to the authority established, blah, blah, blah. And then changes to the text of the ordinance may be proposed by the city commission, planning commission, or any interested party or organization. They can do that by application, city commission, planning commission. And so it says there's 2 different things there, but it's hard to suss that out when you're just looking at that paragraph. So wanted to put those in 2 sections so that you know what's in the section. The section deals with the rezoning or changes to the zoning map and changes to the text of the land development code. Just to make that a little clearer, that there are 2 different things being dealt with in this section, and the standards for those things they're not separated into those 2 sections. They deal with them as you go through. You'll see, when you get to the later part of this, like starting in section 7 here, it starts with if a rezoning is requested. So otherwise, the standards apply to both text amendments and zoning map changes requested. But so the first standard is just minor grammatical thing. Again, or section D header is minor grammatical. Section 1, community master plan, mentioned that before. In section 2, we're eliminating the term zoning ordinance and installing land development code. The term zoning ordinance is in here, like I said, all over the place in this code, but we're dealing with this section. I think it's good to get rid of the term zoning ordinance. The term zoning is going to be with us forever, probably, when we're dealing with this type of a code. But we no longer officially have a zoning ordinance. We have a land development code. So going down to item 5, this is another one where I just lined through the entire section to make it easier to look at the changes being proposed. And that would say conditions have changed. So it's one of the things to consider. Conditions have changed since the land development code was adopted, or an error in the LDC justifies the amendment. Our attorney looked at these proposed changes, and one of her comments was none of these standards should really be asking a question. And the way that was written, it was asking a question. It was saying, since the ordinance was adopted, was there a change or were there errors? So this is rewritten so that it's not asking a question. In the exclusionary zoning section, number 6, a lot of people don't know what exclusionary zoning is. And I won't expect it to, somebody coming in off the street to understand what that is, and they should be able to understand it if we're using the ordinance code. So it's just an explanation that basically this helps you understand the context that an exclusionary zoning situation would create or foster economic or racial segregation of some kind. That's a term going back to the 1950s when redlining, creating areas of the city where only people who were going to get mortgages based on their color, mainly, can live. So that was considered exclusionary, an exclusionary practice. And there are still probably, I know, Shire's Hills covenants until recently still mentioned that properties in there couldn't be sold to Negroes. So exclusionary zoning was real this year in Marquette. So anyway, this is explaining that a little more. Going down to our number 8, just kind of revising that, the term impacts on the environment, say environmental impacts, that's really the only change there. Number 9, adding new to the term construction on the site, I thought was an important small addition because that's really what we're talking about in this section. We're not talking about old construction in terms of will the construction meet the dimensional requirements or regulations, because in terms of amending a zoning district, and that's what this is, where it starts off with the term if rezoning is requested, you're not going to deny a rezoning on the basis of the existing buildings not meeting. In general, this is probably not going to happen. That the planning commission is going to recommend to deny it based on them not being able to meet the standards if there's no real issues with that besides the fact that they don't meet the standards. And your upcoming, well, you've already, it's coming to the city commission, the Mersey's rezoning. That had setbacks it didn't meet, but nobody found that those setbacks were going to be a problem to require, rise to the level of recommending denial of it. So just clarifying that. In number 10, this not necessarily something that we have to have in there, but I just thought including a plan unit development district, PUD, because sometimes people don't think about PUDs as a zoning district, but it totally is a zoning district. If you approve one, it becomes its own zoning district. In number 11, this is really talking about conditional rezoning. I think about how this has been in the code for a long time. I'm not sure what the original intent of this was because conditional rezoning wasn't an option in the city until we adopted the LDC. And I think this might have been in the code before the LDC. No.
Conditional rezoning was something the state law changed, so then we were able to adopt it.
Yeah, but this didn't, it said, it says in the beginning, if a rezoning is requested to allow for specific use. That's really only the case if it's a conditional rezoning, so I thought it made sense to call it out. In 12,
It just seems the wording there is still funny.
okay. What part of it?
If a rezoning is requested to allow for a specific use, it's got brackets.
But this isn't about a text amendment, which you'd be asking for a specific use in the text amendment. It wouldn't be a conditional rezoning. So it's saying it's preferable to a text amendment.
Well, it starts with if a rezoning
Zoning is requested
yeah.
to allow for a specific use. Would a text amendment be more appropriate? Meaning the rezoning because they want this use, it wouldn't be conditional rezoning. They may say, I want to go from mixed use to general commercial because general commercial allows for marijuana uses, for
Rezoning
Is
is
more
considered more appropriate.
Then amending the list in that current zoning district. Yeah, so I think we would actually strike that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in 12, instead of saying requested rezoning, I thought it was more appropriate to say the new zoning district, because that's what we're talking about. Would not be an isolated or incompatible zone in the vicinity. I went back to one of those documents that we used for, we used it in the case for Maresy Oaks about spot zoning, and it does not use the term neighborhood in there, and I kind of thought the term neighborhood could be, I thought the term vicinity was a little more appropriate, because we're not always talking about the neighborhood, we're talking about some part of the city. People don't think of the corner of Washington and McClellan as a neighborhood. Exactly. And the next section is specifically dealing with the rezoning with conditions, or conditional rezoning. And the big thing here was we've been having problems with every one of these cases with the applicant needing to submit or the applicant actually submitting the rezoning agreement at the time of application to the planning commission, because it says in here, so the conditions attached to the rezoning shall be set forth by submitting a conditional rezoning agreement listing the proposed conditions, and then it goes on past where I have the highlight. It shall be considered to be fully approved, not considered to be fully approved until the agreement is approved, and failure to provide it within 90 days, period identified above, will terminate the request. And nothing in here said you have to submit this to the planning commission when you apply. And so people weren't doing that, and it was, we had made an interpretation basically that you could submit this to the city commission when you go to the city commission. It had to be submitted by the time the city commission makes a decision on it. And that really wasn't satisfactory, because this is in here for planning commission review. And it's not a difficult thing to prepare this document. You basically just have to follow these steps below. And it's relatively simple. It's something you can do on one sheet of paper. Basically, this agreement, if you have to go to the second side of the sheet of paper, fine, but it's not going to be 2 sheets of paper to do this agreement, because you basically just have to state what's in each one of these things. I acknowledge is basically what you have to say for each of these items. And then, some of them are a bit different, but again, the city attorney reviewed these proposed changes and thought that they were fine. And one thing I want to point out, you can't see it here as we go. I don't know that item B is the one. So this is what it said in item J, and in what it says in item J currently. The current code, that is, the current code, when you get to item J, it says what's in item B. I thought it was a lot more appropriate that we put that up at the top of these statements, because it's more important for somebody to see this and understand it before they get too far in this process. That this is an attachment that has to be included with your application. Again, to reemphasize that whole thing, we need this as part of your application, and the planning commission needs to see it and make a recommendation based on all of this information, including that. And so that's what is in this dark text that you probably can't read, or you can barely read it, under item, the current item J. And so when you get to item J, that was what was item K, moved up to J.
So Dave,
Uh-huh.
are you saying that a conditional rezoning plan is required?
Yeah, it's always been required.
It's only required if they want to see, if they're submitting for development.
Okay, because B doesn't say it's required, it says may contain.
Yeah, it's up to them if they want to do that, if
Okay,
they want to go that far. So for instance, if somebody submitted a conditional rezoning with a plan, that is the only use that they're applying for, that building and whatnot, and they can't make changes. So it really doesn't behoove them to do that, and it would limit them, they wouldn't have all of the uses that they might be asking for normally with a conditional rezoning.
Or they may think this will work in our favor to show the commission's what I'm planning. You know, when we had the rezoning for the request to rezone the property on Division Street for a self-storage area, he thought, maybe it'll help if I show these, but
If you show it, that's all you can do, you're just rezoning for, so if he did that, those plans are what you would do. And the other problem is then we'd have to do site plan review at that time too, because those plans are what the city's agreeing upon. So if they change because we're looking at it and you're not even meeting site plan review, that's an issue as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that you have some of that language, or I'm almost wondering if the state, if you do that, we'd have to do an administrative review of it or something first.
that seems, that whole thing seems problematic.
Sorry, do we want to review that today, or are we just going over the changes and coming back to the next meeting to review?
I believe, Dave was saying, since we're just kind of going over it tonight, since you just sent it, and you guys haven't had a chance to review it prior to.
any other comments on that? That seems like the only part of this that you guys are hung up on.
I think that it might require a review by you guys.
You know, so one thing, our attorney wasn't hung up on that, but it is a good point that, you know, I think we should talk with her a little bit more about this, because I'm not convinced that if they show us a plan, that they can't change it. But I think they would have to come back to one of the two bodies to make a change to it.
We'd have to read the state law on this.
Yeah.
I know when I went into the first initial training of this, it said if you do the conditional rezoning where you're just not going to the zoning district, you're doing it with the plan, that basically is your site plan review. You're asking for this. This is the only use. You filled in all of this is what you're doing at that one shot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll
Just ask the
investigate that
attorney.
issue.
I would ask the attorney whether or not that then could be changed without coming back, or.
Yeah, and I kind of was looking at number one where we're adding after time to ask this last, then this doesn't make as much sense either after it. Here, I think that needs to be amended too.
Okay, so we'll be back at this section.
Good. All right, commission and staff.
Well, actually, I have a question for you. Mr. Guder brought up a good question and had me thinking when I was showing you guys the drawings and the corner lot that it could be switched. Do you want me to show both ways of how that can be applied for that lot? That way, if somebody says, okay, what would it look like here and what would it look like in that instance if we switch the rear and side yard?
Or with text.
It would be too much.
Address that.
Yeah. Basically, the reason I wanted it to clear up is I'm even getting questions from staff about it.
I'm thinking a drawing might be even more confusing.
Switching it, saying this could be the rear yard, or you can switch and this could be the side yard and rear yard, and that's how it's applied, I think it actually would not.
Well, that's where I think text would be pretty simple, understandable.
Could you do it by just saying rear or side yard?
No, because that will change the rear yard setback lines and the side yard setback lines.
True. Oh, yeah.
And it changes how things are applied, so visually it makes more sense to give both,
Yeah.
not
Then-
text.
But the deed is gonna give the address to that property, and even that might be a restriction that you can't just switch.
Our code doesn't, it does say the address, you can look at it, but it still is up to the applicant on how they apply the yards, as long as both, either way they're doing it, is going to meet those requirements for the rear yard. So if you have enough room to make the other one a rear yard, you can do that if you wish. And we can show that in the drawing, and I'm thinking maybe we should do that. So actually, I'll bring you guys something else on
Once they choose, they really can't go back either.
that. So,
Usually it gets locked in by the development on the lot.
because they may have built it just the minimum side yard at 5 feet, and then that could be a rear yard. But in this instance, they could switch, there's enough room there. So we could have it drawn showing both ways. And I think that would save, because like I said, I've had staff come and ask me questions, so I think maybe it just visually be better if we show both after Jake asked that question.
Yes, I think what would help there is, for one, yes, having both visuals, just to make it easier for anybody looking at it. And two, actually stating what requirements are for stating it's a backyard versus a side yard or front yard. That might help to clarify so people can actually see which layout applies to them.
It's your setback and for your zoning district. So when you're looking at your zoning district, and then you're determining that, then where your home is built, that determines it.
Then that note might be best set in that location so we can fix.
Awesome. Anything else? Okay, commission and staff comments, start with Commissioner Lord.
Nothing, thank you.
Just a question on square footage of those houses that are going in that habitat. Do they have any idea how big the structures are gonna be?
Yeah, they have a layout of what they are planning to build.
They don't have it to where it's set right now.
No, but I just wondered what kind of size they were looking at, square
That we
footage.
don't know. We've just been reviewing officially under the site condominium where they're at, so doing the unit lot sizes.
And they're pretty moderate sized. I think they're gonna be pretty moderate sized homes.
Like 1,200-1,500 square feet.
Probably something around there. One of the comments I made when we had a meeting with them was, see how the lots are tapered from north to south, they get bigger on the south end. And they want to put all the homes at the same level from like how many feet they are from the front setback. And one of the things, I recommended that they look at and do is not do that, because some of the properties on the very north end, the backyards are so small, if they were doing that, that they won't be able to have room for any accessory structures. And with a small house, you're gonna want shed. Most people are gonna want a shed.
Or at least a yard if there's children. I mean, and that was my
Yeah.
concern, that there's not
Right.
a lot of area back there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Back to Commissioner Lord.
I was just gonna state that, Habitat has 4 adjacent homes they constructed on Union Street, near the west end of Union Street. And you could pretty much get an idea that I think they have a pretty limited pattern book that they work from. You can see size there. Thanks.
No comment.
No comment.
I actually had 2 questions. One, I'm curious, I haven't seen any use of process flow charts. I'm curious if that would be beneficial in a lot of these documents that we're going through when it comes to having processes that might be easier for the person to read through. Just a thought and a question on that one.
What did you say?
Process flow chart. for a lot of the steps and processes that we have that are right now written. Not sure where they'd be most.
Oh, you're asking to put it in the code?
Yeah, tell the flow chart.
Yeah, I do have flowcharts for staff. We have our operation procedures now, but you're asking for it to be written in code.
Yeah, because a lot of this that we're doing, it sounds like that might be beneficial for people to see.
That is in our guide to development, which some of you probably don't know we have, but it's on our website, our guide to development, that's the process flow charts. It's like a 25-page manual for anybody that's wondering what development is process. Who we talk to, what departments are involved.
Are there any like links with things like that?
That's all I really.
That would
Probably the
connect?
applications.
Do you want to send something else? Yeah, we'll send that.
You can actually find them on the city's homepage.
Okay.
Maybe not. One go check or something.
Yeah. One of the things about, I mean, I guess, we continue to make this document bigger, with all these changes, like trying to clarify things and whatnot, and that's kind of antithetical to what we really want as a simple document, but we end up having to explain stuff. The more stuff you have to deal with, you have to explain more.
Sure, I think it comes more for when you have a clear layout, and then because a lot of this conversation I heard was, wait, so when do you have to go do this? So it seemed like it was not very moment, so just question if that would be something that might be beneficial looking into. And then also, you mentioned that you're using the Grammarly, so I'm expecting or questioning if we're gonna have a lot more of these types of reviews, with a lot of grammar changes, and if so, if it's possible that I know these systems have things like comments, so it sounds like you had a lot of explanation for a lot of the changes. If it might be beneficial for efficiency of our meetings, you're not having to explain every step along the way during the meeting, if like the comments used would be beneficial and being sent out for us to review. I'm hoping that we have a lot more of those, because I like these changes in reading.
I don't know. I think I like your idea.
I'm confused. So you said the comments, so the comments you were getting from people?
No.
The comments for your
but-
reasoning for the changes.
Oh, so in green, that's where I have the reasoning.
Well, yes, but there's a lot here that we just went over tonight that were, changes in a word or something, or even an explanation of, well, I'm showing the full changes on number 8, but below it's the old paragraph, and below that's.
I see what you're saying. You want more, comments on our end in here telling you. I got it. Sorry.
I know that,
I'm with you now.
These systems have the comment capability, now, those are added, I use them a lot of my last job, so I'm curious if that might be beneficial to use that with us.
It would be. It's just a matter of time.
Sure.
How much time it takes.
All right, that's all. for me.
I have 2 questions. Were we gonna do some kind of land development code rewording on fencing for gardens in the front yard?
That'll be at your next one.
Next
We
meeting?
haven't had a chance. These were in the works prior to that, so we're just trying to get.
Okay. And has there been anything at all about doing some work on zoning for data centers, or any response from the city manager to our letter that we sent out? Or
No.
any action on that?
No.
So there's been no response.
Has Lansing voted on that moratorium that they were looking at for a year? That was in the works also, a moratorium on any further development for those types of structures in the state.
I don't think I got out of that full legislature.
Okay, I don't know.
I think it was just a bill that was introduced.
It was a bill that was introduced
And-
for a one-year moratorium.
Yeah. I don't think that's gone.
No, yes, it's still at that level of review.
Okay.
It's the email I sent you.
I have no comment. So,
I think we're gonna try to wrap up the LDC amendments in April. I expect we'll have, revisions to go over at the recommendations, revisions of the next 2 meetings.
And then for me, I just did training today on the Land Development Act amendments. And it will require amendments with the code, but there's no way possible knowing all this stuff and discussions that we made that will be in the set of amendments. But it is interesting, the changes that the state has made to allow for more divisions of unplatted properties. So we'll have more for that later. But just letting you guys know.
Oh, and one other thing, we did find out based on Steve's comment about the, specifying for, cast iron, tactile domes on the curb ramps. The city has started doing that already. We found out, they read the minutes from our engineering department, looked at our minutes, and said, we're already, we started doing that last year. So, good observations.
Mr. Fantastic.
All right, with that, the meeting is adjourned at 7:25.